G'day Bomber fans, it's contract time. We're today going to talk about all of Essendon's out-of-contract players for 2025 in no particular order. We're just going to chat about what the situation is with each player. I'm going to give my insight. I'll have a think about what they got to do to earn a new deal and whether or not I think they'll get one. Long video today because there are plenty of players to talk about, so let's get right into it. Starting with probably the most obvious of the lot, I reckon, Todd Goldstein. He's 37 this year. It's just rare to see players last that long. Credit to him. And we have seen him decline in output a tad, no offense. He's one of the best rucks of the modern era, but age is catching him and he has now lost his place in the team to Nick Bryan, you feel. He's going to play out the year, but I'm pretty confident he retires after that. I believe he's the second oldest current player in the competition. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think only Pendlebury is older than Goldstein, and you're not that old, that tall, and playing such a hard role. He's done so well to get to this stage, but yeah, he's going to take his time to think through this one, probably. He took time to think through the extension last year, but I just can't see him going on again. He's not going to be on our list yet next year. I'm pretty confident in that. On to the other end of the spectrum, I think we retain players like Harry Jones. I feel like last year with that contract trigger and everything, and the form he showed with that new role, finishing in the top 10 in the Crichton Medal, I think he's stiff to be out of contract, to be honest. I would like to see young players that performed well and showed a ceiling to perform higher. I think they deserve 2 years to keep them happy and secure. Yes, I think a bit of pressure is important. I don't like long-term deals, but we have seen what happens when other clubs come snooping for players like this. Massimo would have stayed if we gave him an extra year. So yes, Jones had that trigger to get the 1-year extension, but this year, if he plays early and regularly and well, I would back him in for a mid-year extension or earlier, a 2-year deal as well. Get him signed early so we hold on to him. Players like this who are out of contract will warrant attention from other clubs. I think Jones is one of the out-of-contract guys that we should persist with, and that's why I think he's probably due for a cheeky negotiation soon. I reckon he's given a new deal. Even if he's has a poorer than expected season or has an injury or two, I would still back in the club to give him even just a 1-year extension. This is someone I think we should really be keeping on our list for next year. In fact, I think out of contract players, he's in the top 2 or 3 that we really need to keep on. He will stay if he wants to. Nick Bryan, this is another one who really gets to make the decision himself. I'd be really surprised if we don't offer him a contract. Jones and Bryan, I think these two, we give them a couple of years early into the season to avoid any unneeded stress from other teams. And I think it's important that we give Bryan a little early sign of faith, if you get me. His career so far has been him putting trust into Essendon. I believe he received offers from Gold Coast at one stage, or there were talks with management, something along those lines. He stayed with Essendon, then he went through a couple of seasons where he just wasn't really utilised despite dominating in the VFL. His work rate in the reserves has been incredible. He consistently puts his hand up for selection, and until recently was just stuck behind a 36-year-old Goldstein. I think it's important that we kind of make this little dynamic between Bryan and the club more fair and give him, put paper in front of him before the end of the year. I reckon he's pretty clearly a must-sign for us, and I think he has a big year in store for him. I reckon he's going to play quite a lot of footy. Let's get the other ruck out of the way, Sam Draper. This is a big one because he isn't just out of contract, he is a restricted free agent, which means clubs can get him over to join in an easier fashion. So he's probably our priority signing for the year, especially with Adelaide being keen. The only issue is it is really hard to judge his value right now. We kind of have to wait until at the very least halfway through the year to decide anything, because he could just prove us fools if we lowball him and he moves away for bigger and better things after having a good season. But he can just as easily as well make us look silly if we offer him up to 5 years and he ends the season with another injury after we offer him the contract. This is a really interesting contract situation, one that is really hard to predict as well. In an ideal world, we can just wait until the end of the year and give Draper the fair amount, but that would mean that if he starts to perform and looks like a close to elite ruck, the Crows can swoop, offer him heaps of money and take him away. This is going to be talked about a lot. My gut feeling is he stays though. Will Setterfield, I think we have our first at-risk player. He was the last player to sign an extension last year. He was made to wait until after the trade period, and he only signed a 1-year deal, which honestly I think he was pretty lucky to get. He only managed 4 games for the year with some injury battles. People do forget that he did finish the year fully fit in the VFL, unable to break into the senior team as well. So it's not just injury, he's just become a depth midfielder for us, which is all well and good. We like those on the list, but now he is starting to fall further down the pecking order. Caldwell and Durham joining the midfield full-time sent him down, and Sartas is starting to show signs of real potential, meaning he has to leapfrog him now. I don't really think Setterfield will play much this year, and as a 27-year-old, you kind of have to be playing footy. He's not young anymore, he's reached his peak as an athlete, his ceiling is just not really able to go much higher, which kind of means if he isn't a first-team player, he isn't a required one. I think he's delisted at the end of the year, to be honest. I know a few of you guys disagree with my views on Setterfield, and I hope I'm proven wrong. He had some solid games in 2023, he's having a good preseason. I think it's a massive year for him, but I just don't think he'll be on our list next year. Let's go to a rookie. We have 2 new recruits that are out of contract in their first season, starting with Archer Day-Wicks. You only get 1 year if you go through the rookie draft, but given his price and rookie list spot nature, there has to be a lot going wrong for him to be delisted. You got to show real unprofessionalism and I guess real disconnect from the level for clubs to pull the pin on a fresh pickup this young, 18 years old. All he really needs to do is show intent to learn and grow, put in some good performances in the VFL and don't do anything silly off field, and I back him to do that. I like him on our list. He's got a very wide range of a ceiling, could be nothing, but could be a good player. I think we give him an extension at the end of the year like we did with Vigo last year. That would have been a good time to talk about Vigo actually, because he's out of contract too, but I've got Jaxon Prior up next to my notes because he is our other new recruit to the club who is only here for a year on paper right now. I expect him to be another who signs on, and part of this is because I have pretty high hopes for him. I think he can become a first team player. I've said that from before we even got him, so this would have been my view back then, and even if he is out of the team to start the year, I'm still going to back him to get that contract. I just think he can be a good addition to our team as depth. He's only 23 right now too. It's not like Setterfield where he's hit that 25, 26 peak range. Prior still has a bit of room till he hits his ceiling, so I think there are more reasons to sign him. And also look at the losses to our depth. The Heppel, Kelly, very similar players he replaces, so even if he is just depth, it's depth we don't really have right now, which is the opposite of Setterfield. I like Prior. I think he'll gather some fans and get another year on his contract. Now we can talk about Vigo Visentini, and a really fun little thing here is that for some reason all 4 of our rucks are out of contract right now. Goldie, Draper, Bryan and Vigo are all out of contract, so this means we're probably going to wait until late in the year to decide on a few of these guys. We'll wait to see what happens with all 3 rucks before getting to Vigo, just because they're higher priorities. And if all 3 for some reason re-sign, it might make list spots thin, put a bit of pressure on him, but I don't think that's going to happen. As I said, I think Goldie's going to retire. There's a chance Draper leaves. If either of those things happen, it opens the door for another year of Vigo in the ruck in the VFL. Now, I should say, I don't think he's close to AFL footy yet. I don't think he plays a game this year, but he is a project ruck. Projects take longer. Rucks take longer, sorry. If he shows promise in the VFL and at training, I think that's enough. I reckon he'll be on our list next year, but he shouldn't feel 100% safe. Dylan Shiel, pressure is on here. I think if he has another year reminiscent of the last 3 years, to be honest, not even just the last. I think if that happens, we probably part ways with him. Sure, he has the odd game or two in him, but he just isn't there enough for us to be paying him large amounts of money. People like the idea of him on our list, and I agree, he does give us good experience. He's having a good preseason, but he's been one of our highest paid players since coming across to the club. Another year would give us less space in the salary cap, more exposure for a player behind him in the pecking order if he was to leave. If he takes a big fat pay cut, sure, let's keep him on the list, but I think at the end of the day, other clubs will be better suited with him than us. Same as Stringer. It would be great to keep a player that good, but we just can't justify giving up more than we should to keep him. It could well come down to that. He would have to have a blinder of a year for me to change my mind, or he's already having a good preseason off halfback. If he performs well there, I'd change my mind. I just think he's traded or delisted or retires at the end of the year. I'd honestly be pretty surprised to see him with us in 2026. He'd have to play more than 9 games this time. If he plays less than half the year, I'd probably want him gone, not going to lie. Another one, Jayden Laverde. He wanted a contract negotiation in 2024. We didn't give him one. There were talks of a trade. It never happened. He has to see out his contract, which runs out this year. And by the way, he is now our 4th oldest player, which is pretty wild to think about. I feel like it was only a few years ago when he was a young forward moving to the back line. Time flies a bit. We're getting old. Laverde is now 29, which of course means he has to be in that first team range. If you're that age and not playing regular footy, it means you're under the pump. Last year was actually a good one for him in hindsight because remember he started out of the team in round 1 and then injuries forced him back into the fold. If our backline stays fit, if Ridley and Reid and even Hayes stay fit, I think Laverde doesn't break into that 22. And if he doesn't, he's probably let go. Simple as that. So I'm being optimistic for the outlook of the club and saying that Laverde is delisted, not because I dislike Laverde Laverde. He's been a good competitor for us over the years, but if he isn't playing footy, or if he's playing VFL footy every week, it means our defence is starting to progress and evolve, and it would hopefully mean we are a fitter and healthier and better team too. So I think Laverde is delisted or traded, and I'm sure some clubs would be interested. Alwyn Davey Jnr, a tough year to be a small forward out of contract. You got to feel really bad for him because this feels like a really big year for the smalls. So Gresham obviously came to the club last year and has a year of safety. Isaac Kako coming through puts so much pressure on the existing smalls because Reid Unwin also came through with him. So we've drafted 2 small forwards a year after trading in one. So we now have a bit of clutter there. You can't really justify having so many on the list, especially because we have another small forward in our NGA for this year that we can kind of use as insurance if we want at the end of the season. That's why I think one of these next 2 players might be delisted. I'm going to get to the other one shortly, but we start with Davey Jr., who I just think has a bigger ceiling than some others on our list currently. His weaknesses are partly due to his frame, which has built pretty significantly this preseason. He's having a good preseason, and that could really help his case. I think he's under pressure. His twin was delisted last year. He's out of contract this year, and he isn't a concrete first-team option either. If he has a bad year, he's probably a goner, but I think he has more going for him than the next guy, although it is tight. Jye Menzie, so really it's him and Davey, I think, battling for a list spot, and to go on that a bit more, just look at the names on our list. You got Gresham, Guelphy, Kako, Unwin, Davey, Menzie. That is a lot of a similar style in one team. That's why I think one probably goes to give us more oomph in other areas. And Jye Menzie, I just don't know if he has it anymore. I really liked him in 2023. He showed promise as that role player forward, but I just don't really know if his role is needed anymore in our system. I feel like he's going to play less footy than Gresham, than Guelphy, Kako, and probably even Davey, leaving just Unwin as the one behind him on the pecking order. But again, it's tight between him and Davey. I think whoever has the worst season is probably gone. That's just what I think. And I'm just guessing that Menzie will have the worst season. Maybe that's recency bias because Davey's looked good at training recently. Just Felix from the future coming here because after recording this video initially, the news of Davey and his knee injury came out. That definitely does make this a little bit different. Davey was in great touch over the preseason and has had that progress ruined a bit by a 1 to 2 month injury. He's probably going to have a late start to the year now, and we'll have to build on that over time, on his fitness and on his game. So he's already behind the mark. It definitely doesn't do him any favours, that injury, so I guess it makes things a little bit more difficult for him in his contract year. Zach Reid, we've got some tough ones, so this one feels like a really big year for Reid. This guy has just not been able to get on the park ever since he was drafted. Well, not even. Ever since he made his debut, he's just suffered all these injuries when he should be playing. The guy hasn't even hit double figures for games yet. His only game in 2024 was in round 1, and he was taken off before half-time with an injury. If that happens again, if he has another season-ending injury spree early in the year, I would honestly back the club in if they decided to get rid of him. It's getting harder and harder to justify reasons for keeping this guy every year. I really like the look of him when he plays. He's got serious potential. We know this. He could be a really good defender for the club, but there are serious worries with his body. There's a chance he's just not made for the sport. He could be Scott Gumbleton. So this is a massive year. He genuinely could be delisted, and I wouldn't be surprised. I'm going to say he gets an extension. I'm going to cross every finger possible and say he gets through a few games and shows enough to get at least 1 year, but I'm really worried about him. I'm going to be stressing watching him every minute. Luamon Lual, now he's actually a player under pressure too. He was taken in the second round of last year's draft, the year before last, still in 2024 mode. So he's in his second season at the club, out of contract as a draftee after 2 seasons. The question now is, what does he have to do to get a new deal? I feel like he probably doesn't need to make his debut, but if he does, it would be big. It would really help him stay on our list. For Luamon, I think we just need to see consistency and serious improvement on his game in 2024, because let's be real, he wasn't great in the VFL last year. He had his moments every now and then, but across the board, I would say it was a developmental year. He was never really that close to playing AFL. I think maybe that's what he needs. He needs to be close to playing AFL. If he ends the year nowhere, being overtaken by others on the list, there's probably a risk of him being delisted. 2 years is more than enough time to show promise, especially in his position and with his versatility and athleticism. He should be pushing for selection when there are injuries. He should be waiting in the wings for an opportunity. But right now, I would say he's in the bottom group of players in terms of pure quality right now. Not potential, but match day output, which is fine if you're a youngster in your first year with another contract year to follow. But if there isn't any improvement this year, it could be trouble for Luamon. Same story story with Alistair Lord and Jayden Davey and Josh Eyre and about 50 other national draftees that were delisted without playing a game. Not an Essendon specific thing. It happens across the league. Sometimes players just aren't AFL level, and well, this is big. We're going to find out this year if Luamon Lual is. On the flip side, you've got Saad El-Hawli. Now, without knowing anything about these two players, if we had to solely go off contract situation, you would suggest that El-Hawli is under more pressure because he is yet to play. He's a mid-season draftee, 1-year contract. He's older. He's turning 24 this year. So if he was to spend the year in the VFL, I mean, a delisting would probably be on the cards, but I think we all know that Saad is set to play at some stage. He arguably could have played already if he didn't injure his ankle last year. I'm much more confident in his ability over Luamon Lual's. I'm pretty confident Saad will be with us next year. I will say, though, it is very rare for mid-season draftees to last 2 seasons without playing an AFL game and get a contract the next year. So he probably does need to feature in the main team at least once, but I reckon he will. And finally, Ben Hobbs. Now, this is a really interesting one. It was only a year or two ago when we were all talking about him as a big part of the future, but I feel like the hype has just dwindled down a touch, and he's kind of stuck in this range of the Perkins and Cox and whatnot, struggling to make a proper impact and get into his preferred position, especially with Durham and Caldwell moving up the pecking order, Sartas too. I think Hobbs plays a bit of footy this year, and I think we at the very least offer him a 1-year deal. That's if he's unimpressive. If he does manage to improve and solidify a spot in the team, it will be more. But if he is where he was last year, finishing the year in the VFL, in and out of the team, there's a chance he doesn't get the security he wants. And like with Massimo, another club might be better suited to take him on. I really wouldn't be surprised if trade talk revolves around him this year. In fact, I'm expecting him. I think he's going to be talked about a lot in terms of trades. So big season for him. But that is that. Those are all of our out-of-contract players for 2025. Let me know what you think down below. Anything you think I'm misreading, anyone you think is under more pressure or less pressure than I think they're under, comment down below. Cheers for watching though. Stay tuned, plenty more videos to come. Like, subscribe, and go Bombers.